So the Remington Model 341, as I said before, was only manufactured from 1936 to 1940, and obviously we can only allude that World War II probably had a big influence in that. But another issue that came to play was manufacturing. Like I mentioned before, primarily when it comes down to manufacturing, we're talking about cost. And that's what we're going to dive into today when it looks at the action and what truly makes this rifle very special. So on its face, the 341 looks like any other generic 22 long rifle that you could pick up with that's a tube loader and a bolt action. Pretty much like anything you'd find in the old Sears catalog. Well, this thing is very, very different from the rest. Now, a lot of these were originally fitted with target sights. A lot of the 341s, they had them, like the 341Ps especially. But this one just has your regular slider rear sight and your regular dovetail in front sight. Very simple stuff. It's got a 25-inch barrel on there. The basic magazine tube has a 15-round capacity for your 22 long rifles. Pretty simple. Now, a couple standout features to this, and it's very similar to the Winchester 72, which was manufactured a little bit later than this one. But if you could check it out, right here on the rear side of it is going to be your leaf safety. And this thing reminds me so much of the old Mausers that I was tickled by this thing. So let's dive into it. When it's decocked, you cannot actuate it, obviously, because you can't even fire the rifle. It's decocked. But when you cock it for a safety device, boom, it'll pop up right there. It works as a trigger disconnect, and it also blocks the view of the shooter. So a very nice feature to have on this thing. Now, what truly sets this rifle apart is this long action on there. That's a very long bolt for a 22 long rifle, and it's going to seem very foreign to most shooters, including me when I first laid eyes on this thing. Look at this. Positive feed, positive extraction on these neat little ears down here. This is very, very unique to the 34 and the 341 models. To my knowledge, no other rifles, the 22s anyway, followed in this pattern. Well, like I mentioned before, they were crawling up on World War II and at the tail end of the Great Depression, so cost was a factor. And then on top of it, when you look down the action of this thing and you saw how complicated that is, there's a lot of machining going on, and there's just a whole lot going on there. So you throw in how complicated the action is along with the cost, and then world events and stuff, yeah, that's going to put the kibosh on something this complicated. Now here's the big question. Was it worth the trouble? We're going to find out in a second. So here I'm holding a Winchester 72A. Pretty darn similar, right? But there's a big, big difference. One, this was manufactured from 1938 to 1943, so it's pretty much midway through the war before they halted manufacture on this. But very important, look at this action. Much shorter on there, and then it's a push feed. It is not controlled feed like the Remington. Much cheaper, much easier to manufacture. You can just crank these things out, and believe me, Winchester did. So here we have the Remington 341 and the Winchester 72A literally on top of each other, and they look like they're the same stock style, American walnut, very simple. The same basic slider type sights on there, just slightly different, and the same dovetail front sights. They're both 22 long rifle, they're both bolt action, they're both tube fed 15 round magazines. The major difference is that action. A detailed comparison video of this is going to come later on. Today we're going to focus on the 341, and we're going to discuss that action a little bit more. So I would say that the 341 reminds me a lot like the German Mauser, the K98s. Just by looking at it, it does not look the same at all, but just the way that it operates is what really draws me to it to make that comparison. Namely, the controlled feed in the action, and the controlled extraction is the big comparison that I have there, and my biggest draw to this rifle. Now we're going to do a firing test at 25 and 50 yards today, and we're going to see how this thing operates, if there's any issues with it, any kind of jamming, which I've toyed around with a little bit. I have not had any yet. I have with the Winchester though, a lot of them, and a bunch of other push feeds. Yeah, they jam quite a bit. This one, we're going to find out today if she jams up. So before we get to shooting, I want to demonstrate how to load, and I'm going to give a quick demo on the controlled feed and the controlled extraction on this. So first things first, just like any other tube loader, rotate it out. You can pull the tube right there. I take my handy dandy speed loader, feed it in from the top. Oh man, I love this thing. This thing's great for tube loaders. Then I put the magazine back in. Okay, there it goes. Now let's do the demo on the action. For instructional purpose, I'm going to be doing it while it's loaded. The rifle's pointed down range. So, obviously with any other bolt action, open her up. Now watch carefully how this operates. It strips from the tube. It's got the loading ears right there. You got the push feed in there. Controlled feed all the way in. Boom, ready to go. Now let's watch that controlled extraction. Pulls it out, it's gripped by the rim, kicks it loose, and it's already got the next one ready to go. Boom. Boom. There is no failure possible in that action.